The research that we're doing at CPRE especially, it's rigorous, it's scientific, it's robust, but it's applied. It's focused on trying to understand actual policies, practices, materials, and approaches that are hopefully going to improve K-12 schooling. We've done quite a bit of research on segregation in New York City. So for example, trying to understand why the Pre-K for All program is so segregated. These are 4-year-olds. Some of it is the fact that New York City neighborhoods are so segregated, but some of it is actually the options that are available to families. Families are understandably making choices for their kids based on what they think their kid needs, but it actually results in some segregation in that what families are picking is actually related to race and ethnicity. I live on 121st Street, and we see this going on in schools every day, that schools are serving different kinds of kids all across the city, and we really wanted to try and understand why. One really important thing in New York City is the role that the neighborhood school zones play. So if you live in a catchment zone, your neighborhood elementary school, you have sort of first dibs, you have first rights in that. Given the fact that neighborhoods are so segregated, that's actually serving to further reinforce both school segregation and neighborhood segregation. We think of both segregation, but also school composition. So over the last 50, 75 years, New York City's become less white and enrolls many more Black and Hispanic families. And so the question is that's clear. The question is, how are those families being distributed across schools? So actually the segregation levels itself have been somewhat stable for the last 20 years or so. The interesting finding is over the last 30 years or so, the proportion of white families that are in private schools versus public schools, here's a quick stat, that half of all white students in New York City are in private schools. So this notion of school segregation, it's not really just among public schools, it's between the public and private sectors. That's where a lot of the action really is. The last few mayors in New York City thinking and talking about school segregation as sort of in the third rail, that nobody wants to touch it. It's so complicated, it's so complex, it touches on so many issues at the core of people and their families that there has not been a lot of policy changes. Individual community school districts are doing some really interesting things. District 3 right here in the Upper West Side got a really major grant from the federal government to work on some desegregation issues. They're doing some really interesting things. Park Slope, there's many of the districts that are trying to do some things, but you're limited to an extent by neighborhood segregation. But again, they're making some progress. So the future for the research is a little different for me in that I run this large center. And so we always have about a dozen projects going on at any given time. One thing that just landed after months of work a couple of weeks ago, we are going to be working with the Gates Foundation in partnership with New York City Public Schools to help them understand what's going on with NYC Solves, which is the math side of NYC Reads, to help them understand the support they're providing to teachers, what's working best and for whom. We've hopefully been influencing New York City, the state, the country, and around the world. We do quite a bit of work with foundations, also to help them think about their own funding strategies, federal governments. We've worked also with the corporate world a little bit. If you think about in the education world, publishers are actually influencing kids quite a bit. And so what they're putting out in front of kids and teachers matters a lot. So we've been working to help them think about what sort of products they should have in classrooms. The research that we're doing at CPRE especially, it's rigorous, it's scientific, it's robust, but it's applied. That it's not theoretical, it's not focused on theory, it's focused on trying to understand actual policies, practices, materials, and approaches that are hopefully going to improve K-12 schooling.